I'm going to take you through how to format and complete an 8-column worksheet in this tutorial. So what you'll typically see is a worksheet, and you'll note that we've added 2 new columns here for our adjustments, and we will complete those adjustments as we get going. So we start with a trial balance, and we still have an income statement and a balance sheet, just like the 6-column worksheet, but we've added 2 new columns for the debit and credit side of adjustments. So we are merging the last 2 units together. Typically what you'll see is our assets, liabilities, capital, revenues, expenses, etc. listed within the trial balance. We see that left side equals right side, so everything's good to go. And then at the bottom, you're going to be given some scenarios here. And these are the adjusting entries we are going to do. So let's get started. So off the hop, I see that I have supplies that are valued now at $2,000. So I'm going to go up here, and I see my supplies have a balance of $8,000. So what I'll do is I'm going to go right away over to my balance sheet, and they have a balance of $2,000. So I'm just going to adjust my numbers here a bit. I'll take away a couple of decimal places. All right, so that means if it was at 8 and now it's at 2, then obviously I use some. And if I were to do a T account here, I would credit my supplies by a certain amount. In this case, I'm going to do a formula, even though in my head I know it's $6,000. I'm going to go, it's $8,000 minus the balance of $2,000. It means that I had an adjustment of $6,000 to my supplies. If I go back to the previous unit, I know that I always debit an expense. So let's look down here, and I don't see a supplies expense. So that's a problem. But what I'll do is I'll just simply go down to the next available line. In this case, it's row 23. I'm just going to write in supplies expense. I'm going to debit it $6,000. All right, so what I can see here is I have taken my supplies expense of $6,000, just like we did in our journal, and then my supplies were credited $6,000. So if you can imagine on the journal, what we did when we did adjustments for supplies, it was debit the supplies expense, credit the supplies. So that's what I've done on this 8-column worksheet. I've simply just put it all in one place so I can see it, so I'm not journalizing it. All right, let's go on to our next transaction, and we've got depreciation for the year was $12,000. All right, so in this case here, I'm not doing a calculation. In a later tutorial, I'm going to show you how to do a calculation for this, but it says that my depreciation was $12,000. I already have 12,000 plus an additional 20 or 12,000. So I know that my balance will be this plus this. I now have accumulated depreciation of 24,000. Note that I'm not taking it away from my equipment. I am putting it in my accumulated depreciation. So there's a principle called the cost principle in accounting that says we can't change the value of our asset. Even though it might go down over time, we want to keep it consistent at 120,000 as its purchase price. And then what we do to figure out its book value is we just take away whatever depreciation was already calculated. So in year 1, there was 12,000. There's an additional 12,000 here. So that means $24,000. My book value for my equipment is 120 minus 24, roughly $96,000. And really, I don't know what that asset will be valued at until I sell it. Sorry, I just noticed an inconsistency in font size. Sometimes the spreadsheet does wacky things. Okay, so I also know that I have to do a depreciation expense. I don't see a depreciation expense, so I'm just going to add one. Okay, and it was for $12,000. When I did my adjusting entries, it would be depreciation expense debited, and then accumulated depreciation credited. I'm doing the exact same thing in this adjustment. Okay, on the final one, I took out a 2-year insurance policy at the beginning of the year for $5,000. So I started on January the 1st. It's now December the 31st. 1 full year has gone by. I can do the math in my head. It's going to be 2,500. But once again, I'm going to say, let's do some math here. So it was $5,000 for 2 years. That means It's $2,500 per year. I only have 1 year left in that policy. So I bought it for 5. I've used half of it. That means I now have $2,500 left in that account. And I'm going to go down here and I'm going to say insurance expense. And that's what I've done. So really what I'm doing in these 2 new columns that you see is I'm doing the journal entries that we did in the previous unit. I'm just adding them here. And what you'll see now is it all kind of ties together, and we're able to see the updated balances in all of our various accounts. We're able to calculate our net income, etc. Okay, so we know that from a previous unit, worksheets work left to right. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take my $375,000 balance, put it over. I'll do the same with my payable. Whenever I see that there's something in adjustments, this is what I need to look at. If I have a debit and a credit, I'm going to subtract. So 5,000 minus 25 gives us that. In this case, 8,000, and then I've got a credit. So minus 6,000 is 2,000. And then finally, I've got a credit and a credit. If they're on the same side, I want to add them together. So that's $24,000. All right, let's go on here. And I just noticed I made a mistake. So that actually should have been on the credit side. So as always, I am not redoing this tutorial. I'm showing you that it's okay to be human and to make a mistake, and then you figure out your mistake and you adjust it accordingly. Okay, so this one here is for 120 as well. Okay, now let's go, and I want to transfer all the rest of my balance sheet accounts. And so those are these ones. So I'm just going to copy them, paste them over, and then I'm going to do what I've done before with my income statement accounts, which are my revenues and my expenses. But I also have to notice that I've got 2 new expenses here or 3 new that I need to put here as well. Now, my formatting is all screwed up with my underlines and dollar signs. I really don't care at this point. I'm going to fix all of that stuff at the end. So here's what, actually I can't look at this. It's a little too distracting, so I'm going to get rid of that. Okay, so now it's time for me to add up all of my balances. So to do that, remember I just do a sum function, and I do all of my accounts even if it's blank. And the reason I do that, if you recall, if we click on this once, then we go down and our cursor will turn into cross, and we drag that over. I'm doing that for all of my accounts, which is wonderful. Okay, so now when I look, I've got revenue of 206, expense of 97. I know I have a net income. So I'll go a little quicker here because we did this with the 6-column worksheet. And if you don't remember, just look at the 6-column worksheet tutorial. But I'm going to say, take my 206, subtract my total expenses. And so I had a net income of $108,500. I'm going to give that to the owner. And then let's carry down our final balances and see if we did this right. If we did this right, then our left side will equal our right side for both, and it does. Okay, so we have 540,500, 540,500, 206, 206, 20,500, 20,500. Everything balances out. I am pretty happy. And now let's format this thing. Okay, so that last part, nothing really changes. In calculating our net income, you just need to remember you've got 3 new expenses here. They need to be added to your income statement before you do the final income statement, statement of owner's equity, and balance sheet for your business. All right, so same process applies. So a dollar sign on the first number in each column, and then also the last number in each column. So I'm just holding down my control. Whoops, I screwed that up. Holding down my control, and then you can do them individually. I just like to get them all done at once. Okay, and then underlines, I'm just going to put single underlines here, single underlines here, And we know from the start of the course what all of this means. Single underlines here. All right, and what that means is these are all calculations, so we've summed all of our columns. These four are also calculations, and then to finish it off, we'll do a double underline here. And there you go. So that is your 8-column worksheet. I'll make it a little bit smaller so we can see the whole thing, hopefully. So there's the whole thing there. And I'll walk you through it again very quickly. So you'll be given a trial balance. You'll also be given your adjustments that need to happen. From there, we do some simple calculations. So we did supplies, and then we added the supplies expense. So that was our supplies adjustment. We had a depreciation expense that went to our accumulated depreciation. And finally, our insurance, we used up half of it in this case. So those are your 3 adjustments. And then what we do is we carry our balances over. If there's been some changes in math, I've already explained that. And then you do your net income, transfer it to your owner's capital account by crediting the balance sheet, carrying down our final balances, dollar signs and underlines, and we are done. So there you go. That's your tutorial on the 8-column worksheet. You can access this anytime to support your learning, and there will be some examples for you to work through.